السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Good evening. It's an honor to welcome you in this session, Day Zero session about the impact of multi-stakeholder collaboration on IPv6 deployment. This Day Zero session is co-organized by RIPE NCC and the Communication, Space and Technology Commission in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So welcome, and here today we will highlight how collaboration, trust, and shared vision and goals between the governments, regulators, technical community, and private sector can drive a real impact in IPv6 deployment. As you know, the Middle East region is not strange or not far from the innovation. Through this collaboration and through this partnership, we achieved a remarkable progress in IPv6. And IPv6 is not only upgrade for the technology, as you know, it's a vital and critical tool for the future of the internet. IPv6 ensures scalability, ensures connectivity, and help the ITU efforts in bridging the 2.7 unconnected till now to be connected. Our multi-stakeholder approach with governments and regulators from across the region, CST in Saudi, TIDRA in UAE, TRAs in Bahrain, Oman, CITRA in Kuwait, collaboration with intergovernmental and regional organizations like ITU, SAMENA, ARISPA, ESQA. So all these efforts really fostering our achievements and our efforts in doing or in applying the multi-stakeholder approach in IPv6 deployment. Once again, I welcome you for this session. I welcome our online audience. My colleague Vahan will help as online moderator, and a big thanks for my colleague Ulka, who will be the reporter for this session. So without further ado, let me introduce my colleagues and friends. I have Mr. Mus'ab Al-Ammar, Director of Internet Technologies Development Department, CST, Saudi Arabia. Mr. Abdurrahman Al-Marzouki, Director of Policy and Program Department, TIDRA, United Arab Emirates. Mr. Hisham Brahim, Chief Community Officer, RIPE NCC, and Mr. Adel Darwish, Director of the ITU Arab Regional Office. Welcome, dear friends and colleagues. And to set the scene, we have here with us Mr. Hisham Brahim from RIPE NCC, who will give us a nice overview on the IPv6 status in the region. Hisham, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello. Can everybody hear me? Good. Hello, my name is Hisham Ibrahim. I am the Chief Community Officer at RIPE NCC, and it's been a long time since I've been in IGF, I think over a decade, so it was well overdue. I'm very happy to be here in this session talking about something that's very dear to the RIR systems, the organizations that distribute IP addresses, but also to mine, which is IPv6. Taking a step back about what IPv6 actually is. So the internet is this global network of networks that is interconnected through open standards that ensure interoperability, registration services that ensure uniqueness, and global structures that develop these protocols, standards, and frameworks for accountability. The underpinning technology that connects these thousands of devices, these thousands of networks. If you were in the session this morning, my colleague Ulka was on a panel that they were talking about how there are 70,000 different networks around the world that interconnect. The underpinning technology is IP. So behind every connected device, there needs to be an address that allows it to connect to the rest of the world. Now, Again, very quick historical view. Um, the technology that was used since the beginning of the internet was something called IP version 4, which allowed for a finite number of addresses to connect. Now, it became very clear in the early 90s that we will not have enough IPv4 addresses to continue to grow the internet, which is why IPv6, the successor protocol, was developed. Now, Shafiq wants me to talk about the success in the region, and I think the session will mostly cover that. But I also want to address something early on, that there has been skepticism about the importance of IPv6, simply because the expected runout of IPv4, the crisis that people anticipated in the 90s, never really happened. And that's a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing. The internet continued to grow and evolve. People continued to find ways to introduce transition mechanisms that allowed V4 and V6 to continue to exist. Other technologies. So we didn't really hit any crisis points, which leads some skeptics to say, well, is IPv6 really needed? And the answer today is still yes, it is. And for one key purpose, which ties back to why the internet exists in the first place, which is permissionless innovation, allowing more people to come up with new ideas and putting it on the internet, just like we've seen in the past few decades, where the web came on top of the internet, social media came on top of that, and now whatever new technologies and hypes we're talking about in these meetings, blockchain, AI, and other stuff. Now, to Shafiq's question and summing up quickly, in the region here, we have seen the numbers growing up to the right, which also indicates a healthy IPv6 deployment. We're seeing in many countries, and you're going to hear examples from my colleagues about what they've been doing in their countries that have really driven up not just the number of resources of IPv6 resources in the country, but also how they're being used, how they penetrate all the way to the end user, how the numbers from the content providers are going up, how they are securing these resources through RPKI, and they are actually putting them on the routing tables and de-aggregating them, meaning that they're doing better routing. So in a very quick nutshell, the region here, the Middle East, is doing really well when it comes to IPv6, and we have a couple countries that are actually leading the world, which we're going to be talking about in a second. Shafiq, back to you.
Thank you, Hisham. Thank you so much. So this was the overview from the technical community. Today with us to celebrate this successful multi-stakeholder approach, we have two shining examples from the Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. My question to Musab from CST in Saudi. How CST did manage to put all these players together and fostering this multi-stakeholder efforts in deploying 6 in the kingdom. Now you are rating 4th globally and 1st regionally.
Hello, everyone. Are you able to hear me? Okay, good. Thank you so much, Fiq, for giving us this question. It's an opportunity to show what has been done so far by CST in the kingdom. Our effort started long time ago. I believe it's started since 2008. We started the idea of the collaboration, that we need all of the stakeholders know the importance of the IP version 6 and the risk that the IP version 4 will have very soon because of the depletion. So due to the fact, we started at that time as a national strategy with an objective of making sure that the IP version 6, the IP version 4 depletion will be not a risk for us, for the business community, going through making sure that we have a smooth transition and awareness and capacity building. So at that time, we had a kind of a strategy of 3 focuses. One on the service providers, and the second one on the enterprise, which represent the supply, let's say, and lastly the end users. So having a multiple focuses on those 3 main stakeholders gave us the leverage to be today one of the top countries in terms of adopting IP version 6. And these stages, of course, we had a support from the academia, the technical experts such as RIPE NCC and others to have, let's say, more than 20 training programs and more than 500 participants to make sure that we have a community that knows the importance of IPv6 adoption and the real value of it in the near future for the digital transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you so much. And I will not say a secret that your close collaboration as regulator with us as RIPE NCC was the main driver for this successful IPv6 deployment in Saudi Arabia. Thank you once again. We have another example, our friend and colleague Abdurrahman here with us. So you heard Mus'ab about the experience in Saudi Arabia. What was your experience as TIDRA in UAE, and how it differs from the experience from the Saudi Arabia?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Pleased to be here. My name is Abdurrahman Marzouqi. I'm a Director of Policy and Programs Department within the Telecommunication Digital Government Regulatory Authority in the UAE. IPv6 have been, with me since I joined TIDRA in 2006. That was one of the first projects that I had. So since 2006, we're still working on IPv6. So it's very, very dear to my heart. I remember the first time I had a training about IPv6 in 2006, and everybody was saying that we have to move to from IPv4 to IPv6. Depletion is coming sometime in the future. Of course, it happened. I mean, the depletion from the on the regional internet registries, I think sometime in 2013, so a few years later. And everybody was saying we have to, move on. And then when reality is, the telecom operators who ultimately, distribute IP addresses to users, basically say, well, where is the business case for it? What do I'm going to sell? We don't sell IPv6. We don't sell IPv4. We sell, connectivity. We sell hosting services, and now then later became cloud services. But we don't sell IP addresses. So, but the engineers basically say, well, we need, because our IPv6 v4 is not enough. Then the engineers are, they think about solutions, and they say, well, we can do NATing, basically, to reuse private IP addresses, so we don't need as much public IP addresses. And that kept going on for many, many years. In the UAE, we managed to get IPv6 from 2% in 2019 to 30% in 2020. Within 1 year, or 18 months, that jump happened, because we realized enough is enough. We have to change. We have to, we were talking about it. We're planning, we're testing, we're doing all of that for maybe over a decade. But then there has to be a point where we shift and change and make it a reality. And thankfully, TDRA, with the collaboration of all the stakeholders in a multi-stakeholder approach, we invited everybody from telecom operators to device manufacturers to network LIRs, network operators, with the support of RIPE NCC as well. In 2019, we put a plan and we put certain targets, but actually the benefits of moving from IPv4 to IPv6, less complexity in terms of networks, more efficiency, routing, security, all the benefits and we had to get rid of all these NATing devices. So that also a cost that could be saved. And then in 2020, we managed to get around 30% IPv6, and now we reached around above 50%. Regionally, I think Saudi Arabia is leading the region, and we learn from our brothers from Saudi Arabia. They're leading in the IPv6, and I think the steps that we took probably are identical to so your question was how different it is. It's not different. It's exactly the same. We need to have a direction. We have to have everybody on one table, and then be serious about it. Then it will happen, and thankfully today Saudi Arabia is over 60, I think 65% of IPv6 traffic, and UAE is around 55%. With the support of RIPE, of course, with the training, with the awareness, I think we managed very well, alhamdulillah.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. I will not tell you another secret, because there is no secret now in this meeting room. But when Abdurrahman talked about jumping from 2 to 30% and now to 55%, and the Saudi Arabia now 65%, now we are working with both of them to see what is the bottleneck not to move above 70%. So hopefully next year we meet, we'll see that both countries are more than 70% IPv6. And once again, thank you for your cooperation. So this was at the national level. So let's see how the multi-stakeholder works at the regional level. We have with us here our colleagues and friend Adil, the director of the Arab Regional Office at the ITU in Cairo. So Adil, based on what you heard from the two regulators, and based on our successful collaboration in some countries doing some national IPv6 strategies, what you can tell us about your experience working in a multi-stakeholder approach with regulators, technical community, academic, private sector, and other groups?
Thank you very much, Shafiq. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, allow me to thank RIPE NCC and our host Saudi Arabia for having this wonderful event of IGF here in the city of Riyadh, in this fabulous arena, if I may say. Talking about multi-stake collaboration, you mentioned 2.7, it's now 2.6, so we're getting closer to connecting the unconnected. I believe multi-stakeholderism has been an advocate of our Secretary General, Doreen Bogdan-Martin, for quite a while now. At ITU, we've been working together on setting standards in the Standardization Bureau. We've been working together on developing at the national levels jointly with the regional offices and the Development Bureau. We've seen that this effort, and we're proud to say that we have two very excellent examples in the region. However, the rest of the region is catching up. With the outcome of smart cities, IoTs in the marketplace, more and more IPv6 need is required in the technical arena as well. What we've seen that the interest that was mainly from governments in the past decade has now shifted to the operators. We've seen more and more operators coming to the table, discussing on that platform, seeing how can they learn, how can they get more capacity building initiatives, and that's where ourselves and RIPE NCC have been working closely on that as well. We've launched a few training institutions as well and courses around the region. This has been very successful, and we foresee that the region is going to lead globally the IPv6, if I may say, race in the coming few years. Thank you. Back to you, Shafiq.
Thank you, Adil. Thank you. A third secret, that you are working with ITU on 2 or 3 IPv6 strategies for some countries that they are still lagging behind. And I looked toward Hisham. While we saw that there are some countries, especially in the Gulf region, they are progressing and they are doing very successful in IPv6. Why other countries in the region are still lagging behind? What reasons behind this, let's say, not catching up with other countries?
Thanks for the question, Shafiq. So I think there's 2 really important things here. The first one was mentioned already in the successful engagements, which is getting everybody around the table, making sure that everybody understands the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve It didn't come down as a top-down, you have to do this, you have to implement by this time. It actually was trying to get everybody to buy in and understand, working together. There is no one organization or entity that can just get IPv6 deployed in a country. It really has to be a collaborative effort, which is why we're having this session at an IGF, right? Very appropriate. But the second one is there was deep understanding from the countries that were mentioned and others that are doing IPv6 of what they want to achieve. They don't just want to continue to run the internet. They don't want to continue to run services. They want to be able to provide platforms to support, again, innovation. What comes next, future technologies, and not be limited by a technology that we already knew from the 90s is already dying out. And that mentality is really key. Now, because they understood this, they actually were able to sit down and work with the community on coming up with KPIs that made sense, coming up with action plans that made sense, and acting on them and reacting if there was something not working. So I believe Abdurrahman mentioned like the vendors, if there is a vendor that they had an issue with, then bringing them over and understanding what the issue was. If there was an issue with a perception that IPv6 is more difficult or more costly, then explaining how this actually is not the case and doing the training and stuff. However, we have seen other examples that weren't as successful in the region, that they would, like all of a sudden, you would find overnight a national IPv6 roadmap being developed, and in X number of years, we're going to have traffic of X number of things that is usually developed like by external consultants without talking with the community, without having the understanding of the different dynamics that are in the country. And they're just making impossible promises, which has also led some people to be skeptic, because these deadlines, these flag days come and go and nothing really changes, and the internet continues to run. So people then assume, well, it's not really that big a deal. And I believe those approaches have hurt more than they have helped. Whereas working together, understanding what we're trying to do, allowing for that permissionless innovation was really the key of the success all along.
Thank you, Hisham. Through the last few years, working with the regulators and especially with the CST and TIDRA, we noticed that the concept changed from regulation to collaboration. And this is really a big shift. So, Musab, can you tell us what challenges you tackled during gathering the whole stakeholders around one table? Because we know the operators, the ISPs, they have their own secrets. They don't want to talk or discuss things between competitors. So how you managed to get all these players together around the table?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, as you all know, and as mentioned by my colleague here, Abdurrahman, that IPv6 is not revenue generating. So operators and ISPs, they are not expecting to get money back from these, at least from, let's say, direct revenue. So it was a real challenge at the beginning. And on top of that, at 2008, as I mentioned earlier, that some ISPs and operators, they still have an equipment and devices in their networks not yet supporting the IPv6. So our secret recipe is having like an IPv6 task force at the beginning, gathering all the operators and the experts all over the nation, having a periodic discussion about the importance and the challenges, providing them like a lab to do their experiments to make sure that they are doing something safe, not harming their network, and giving them the time needed to shift and change all of their equipment without reinvesting again on a network equipment that can still last for more years. So this is what we have done to have a smooth, let's say, transition from V4 to V6. And we didn't have any issues because we gave them the time. We raised the awareness. We did a lot of capacity building with partnerships with experts all over the world. And thankfully, it was as smooth as you can see in the trend. So we did that very smoothly. For those countries who will start today, it will be a challenging for them. There will be a cost of changing this equipment and putting a configuration, and even the devices in the network, some devices, phone devices, it requires a long time for testing, and these devices, it has to be certified for IPv6, then it will be enabled with IPv6 in that specific country. So I think this is how. Additional point I would like to add as well. We didn't work only on the we worked on the enterprise side. We secured, or we created a manual for them to understand or to do a full plan, including a technical aspect in that, let's say, guideline. And through that, they will be able to make a good plan to provide their internet services supporting IPv6. And one of the things that I would like to celebrate with you today, we had just, they have just finished the DGA, the Digital Government, the authority. They just finished something called QIAS. The QIAS program is just to measure the readiness of the entities, the governmental entities, for the digital transformation. With a collaboration with them, with DGA in specific, we had some kind of criteria that those entities, those governmental entities who enabled IPv6, they will gain higher score in terms of the readiness for the digital transformation. So we are not only focusing on the service provider, we're also focusing on the supply, helping them to provide the needed services on IPv6 as well.
Thank you, Musab. It's really interesting. The steps and your activities that you take during these years. Once again, I will go to Tidra, because even though your experience have a lot of similarities, but different steps and different, let's say, plans and projects. Because I know that, I don't know if you remember, Abdurrahman, when we talked about why we don't regulate IPv6, you said no, we're not regulated. So what is the strategy of Tidra? Why you didn't go in this direction, and how you encouraged and give this opportunity for the operators to work with you in a soft regulation, let's say, to achieve this successful result?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shafiq, for this question. So there was a discussion actually internally whether we should come up with a regulation or a policy to govern and mandate IPv6. And honestly, at the time, I was opposing any regulatory instrument toward that. In my opinion, the IPv6 is well understood by people who are in the technology and the technical aspects. Maybe that's not well understood by business people. If we came up with a regulation, then that would go to regulatory departments, commercial departments, and they will start thinking about how to be defensive about it and perhaps drag it and delay it as much as possible. That's their natural attitude toward regulation. They'll say, let's try to slow it down. Maybe this will create burden on us, cost on us, and things like that. We said that's not the right approach. Let's talk to the technical people, to the engineering people. They understand this very well. And we talk to them and we tell them, what do you need to empower you if you want to do changes? Of course, the engineers, they would think about, let's draw a plan, let's try to do it as smooth as possible. There is a refresh cycle for all the systems. If you talk to anyone from engineering, they know what I'm talking about, refresh cycles. They know that this device has to live for 5 years, 7 years, then There will be a time it has to be changed. What they've done is basically, early on when we were talking about IPv6, they put a plan in place that all devices that they will procure has to be by default compatible with IPv6. This is done years ahead. But when it comes to the actual action where it will be deployed and they will try to make it all IPv6, then of course they have to do tests, they have to do all of these things. And when there is a device that need to be changed, they'll wait for the refresh cycle and they will change that device so that it's IPv6 compatible. So we came to them and we told them, okay, what's a reasonable time frame for you if you want to start providing IPv6? They said, well, for us, one of the operators said, we're ready, we'll start. We'll start with certain segment of our customers, with certain segment of the network, and they will build an experience and then migrate slowly up until the entire network is IPv6. And they, of course, it will be dual stack, meaning that IPv4 and IPv6, both of them will work. It depends on the customer. If everything is compatible with IPv6, he will get an IPv6 address, and then the traffic will be IPv6 all the way natively from the source to the destination. So they said, the other operator said, we need some time. We have some core functions within the network, still not fully IPv6 ready. We need around a year to do it. That's fine. A year is a reasonable time when we think about the decades of when IPv6 existed. So we waited for a year and they've done the refresh and they started pushing IPv6. So that's in a nutshell why we thought collaboration, as you mentioned, Dr. Shafiq, is a better approach when we talk about moving from IPv4 to IPv6.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. Yes, and I totally agree with you. Adel, back to ITU. We listened to the experts from the capacity building and policy perspective. We know that these two activities, capacity building and standardization, as you mentioned, is at the heart of the ITU work and activity. So how ITU, once again, your office in the Middle East region, how you can ensure that all the Arab countries in the region can catch up with this IPv6 adoption as a critical tool for development and bridging the digital gap?
Thank you very much, Shafiq. So first of all, if you'll allow me maybe to comment on what Abdurrahman mentioned. And I totally agree, sometimes regulation is not the route to go. But we've also seen over the past few years that the business model and the business needs of telecom companies have changed. This has forced the community to now start focusing on other services, especially post-COVID, where now telecom industry has become a pillar for digitization of every other sector. So the need has grown dramatically, and the focus and the business mindset has changed as well. Now, as ITU, of course, we can't do it by ourselves. We're just one player in the field, if I may say, again, going back to multi-stakeholderism. What's key for us is we support when it comes to capacity building. So that's one thing we do jointly with RIPE NCC. We've worked with governments, whether it's ministries or regulators, to set up strategies and policies. Light touch regulation, we always encourage to allow for innovation. That's very important for us. At the same time, we have established a center a few years back in Sudan, which is the IPv6 ITU Center. We've trained a few instructors from that center as well, high quality level of training as well. And they have been like ambassadors of IPv6 promotion, if you like, within the region. Now, we've done this not only in the Arab region, but globally as well. We promote IPv6 usage, especially within the work that is done in Study Group 20 as well, in the ITU-T sector, which is related to smart cities and IoTs. But mainly that has been our focus for the past few years. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, because the business model has changed, in recent couple of years, we've seen requests coming in from operators without even the government. We've seen that operators now want to take the lead on moving to IPv6, which again, that serves our joint purpose or aim in this field as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Adel. Before we take the questions from the floor, and if we have any online question or feedback, Vahan. So for Hisham, I will go back to the recent article you wrote about the internet and what's the internet. Is what we are doing is regulating the internet, or we need to regulate the application who run over the internet? Can you just share your thoughts why we should not regulate the internet?
Happy to answer the question. So the word internet is used on a daily basis because it touches a lot of what we do. However, it doesn't always mean the same thing to the same people, right? When somebody technical like myself talks about the internet, we're talking about that network of networks that are interconnected, that allow packets to go from point A to point B, regardless of what is built on top of it. Whether those packets are web traffic, whether they're another application, that's stuff that's built on top of the internet. Whereas it became the word internet, because it became a big part of our lives, it became a shorthand for everything that is built on top of that network. Now, some of the things that are built on top of that network have issues that need to be dealt with. But that doesn't necessarily mean the internet has an issue. And a prime example of this is something that I usually say. I have a son that likes to play Fortnite. And he's not even 10 years old yet, but he knows when the network is lagging, because he comes to me and says, it's lagging, I cannot play, right? So he's driving up the measurements and the demands like any good customer would. But then he comes and says, the internet is not working, right? Now, it's very difficult to lecture a 9-year-old and say, actually, the internet is working, the problem is with your application. Right? Because that's really the thing. He cannot connect to a server. It's not like the internet around the world is not working. But it's become such a shorthand that people are used to. If you cannot connect to your favorite app on your phone, the internet has an issue. If a service that you're using has privacy issues or trust and safety issues, then we need to fix the internet. Whereas the internet works and functions. So really, it's becoming to a point that it's dangerous, especially when you see the amount of meetings and discussions in governance forums that are talking about fixing the internet, while indeed what they're talking about is platform issues. So misinformation is not an internet issue, it's a platform issue. Privacy issues, again, not the internet. Issues related to, like I was saying, trust and safety. There's a lot of them that fall under the word internet. And the equivalent that I can give is saying you need to fix the internet because your Windows machine that you're using is not allowing you to connect, right? Being able to distinguish where the problem is and dealing with it in the right appropriate forums and talking with the right language about it is key, or else you end up trying to regulate a future technology by changing fundamentals that made the internet what it is in the first place. And that kills innovation.
Thank you, Hisham. Thank you so much for this. And I think this is a misconception that we, every day we see this during our daily life. So I will open the floor for some questions, and I believe Khalid, you raised your hand. I will give you the floor, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yep. Khalid Fattal. Many of you may know me. I've been involved, we're talking about internet governance. I was there when Kofi Annan convened the experts in 2004, and I was there. So that engagement led to the creation of IGF. But the reason I'm bringing this to your attention here is The experiences that I heard from UAE and from Saudi about IPv6, moving from IPv4 to IPv6, and the reasons why it took such a long time, is something I'm going to draw to for the benefit of the community. In addition to the examples that you mentioned earlier on as to why the uptake was not there, and then all of a sudden now it jumped from 2% to 30% or something like this in UAE. This is where the community needs leadership, because I think it was UAE example when you talked about needing to make the case, correct? Or was it Saudi? I can't remember. Somebody was saying that the decision makers, the telecom operators or whatever, were saying, like, make the case why we should go to IPv6. In certain areas, the case cannot be made. It needs leadership. And I cannot underscore this enough, because today, and I attend conferences all over the world, from cyber to AI to whatever, and for the last couple of years, every theme is about AI. I have news for you. Kentucky Fried Chicken is doing AI now. You're laughing. I'm joking. But the truth here is everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, but nobody's asking, what can we do that is unique? Now, the uniqueness could be how your country could develop a competitive advantage in that space. How can it be the innovator, not just the trendsetter because everybody's following? So my point here is, I thank Shafiq for asking me to come here to listen in, because you created this thought in my mind. It's like, how can we learn from the examples that not everything can be made a case for? It requires leadership, and that comes from the government, it comes from the regulator. And I can share something else with you. One of the partners, clients, I can't say who we work with, in a European country owns now more than 80% of the 5G towers. Why I share this with you here is you think, what are they doing with 5G towers? They've figured a different business model. So if you're innovating, and if you're thinking outside of the box and you're thinking, how can I create a competitive advantage for my country? There are many ways to create competitive advantages, and it starts with leadership. So I hope this compels the local actors to consider how they can take leadership roles. Thank you, Shafiq, and sorry for taking too much time.
Well said, really well said, Khalid. And I will take two words from his contribution to ask your colleagues here. He talked about the leadership. Yes, we know that in Europe, private sector leads. In this region, and this is not something negative at all, governments lead. Without the collaboration with these guys, without the collaboration with regulators, and once again, this is not because the governments want to lead because they want to control everything. No, they want to lead because they have the authority. They have the how we say it, the best venue to get people around the same table, and they have the expertise to deal with this. Alone as RIPE and CC, we couldn't get all the operators and ISPs. So this is one thing. And the second thing is 5G. And this is, I will leave this the last question for Hisham, because 5G, Khalid, is a hunger technology for IPv6. So I will leave 2 minutes per each speaker to give his thoughts, and like closing remarks, we still have 10 minutes, and then we close. I will start with ITU.
Thank you very much, Shafiq. I would say leadership should be at the multi-stakeholder level, because if you have one entity pushing, you have cost implications. So leadership should be, like you said, it has to be the whole of the community. It's the operators, it's the policymakers, it's the regulators. They all have to agree that whatever they're doing, whether it's IPv6 or anything else in the industry, has to be to the benefit of the whole. So that's very key. And I also believe we need to continue collaborating with the different stakeholders. And as Khalid mentioned, the business model is not just 5G. The business model altogether has changed a lot. We're not talking the same technology and the same services as we did 10 years ago. It's very different today. with Google Glasses coming into the play today, and I heard that it's become a reality, people are using it today. With all these devices, imagine you're going to have like 10, 20 devices on you in the coming 5 years. So all these devices are going to be talking through the public network. There's going to be needs for that. Are the telecom operators and the environment innovative enough to accompany all these services? So I think it's a multi-stakeholderism. Everybody needs to come together, and we need to look at the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Adil. Hisham, or I will leave Hisham to the end because he will take more than 3 minutes, I know. So, Abdurrahman, please go ahead. Or Musab, one of you.
Khalid Fattal, well said. Leadership, I think, is a key, and of course, you need leadership, but you need also the stakeholders to co-own the problem with you as well, so that they're because at the end of the day, they are the one who will actually make the difference and take the actions. For us, I think, yes, it needs a bit of convincing. We played the argument of telecom is not telecom anymore. They are digital. There is a lot on stake. You have IoTs, you have cloud computing, AI, you have all these emerging technologies. They all need robust and strong infrastructure. You need to develop your infrastructure to cope for all these changes. I think that's a mindset shift that need to happen when you talk about ISPs or telcos. They are not just telcos. They need to move to be digital companies, that they have to have a bigger role. And of course, they need a stronger and more advanced networks. One more comment I have when Dr. Shafiq talked about leadership in our region is usually from the public sector and the government. And I heard this couple of times. People talk to me because I'm also from the digital government. They tell me, I wish, sometimes, I hear these comments, I wish some of our companies build good user experience and applications and digital applications like the government of the UAE. I've heard this a couple of times, and we've seen this. I mean, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, when he comes on stage, and in 2013 he came up and said, I want all the government to be mobile. All the government authorities in the UAE have actually built mobile applications well ahead of the rest of the private sector in our region. And that's the leadership that in our region, I think, the example that we give. And then we see that the private sector is moving as well in the same direction as the government.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. And yes, Dubai now is a paperless government. I since 2-3 years, I never submit any document in paper, never. So yeah, Dubai is one of the successful examples in digital transformation, in technology, and in leadership too. Thank you. Musab?
Thank you so much. Just to wrap up, and wouldn't take that much of time as my
you have
colleague Hisham.
I will give you 3 minutes, Hisham 2 minutes.
I'm kidding. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to agree to what have been mentioned regarding the leadership style and the multi-stakeholder approach that we are getting today. But we need to hear from them, to make them buy in and to believe in our direction. We need to hear from them every little challenge and facilitate whatever that can be facilitated as a government, and letting them believe on the national ambition, because eventually, as mentioned, there is no valid case at that time. But for example, in the last few years, one of the operators were able to activate more than 10 million smart meters easily. It was one of the cases that the IPv6 was like a leverage for them to enable the digital transformation and the IoT solution easily, without going through the IPv6 process and these kind of things. So this is the case, but it is coming now with the 5G, with the IoT. More cases will come up, and the necessity of IPv6 will be more and more clearer for the ISPs and the operators yet. So thank you so much again.
Thank you, Musab. Yes. 30 seconds.
I need to follow up, and thank you all for recognizing and agreeing with what I was saying. But I need to emphasize something. When I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about IPv6 or IPv4. I'm talking in general, and there is a misconception that we need to actually expose. In the West, we always hear about private sector led is better than government because government is inefficient. It's a load of baloney. UAE is an example of this. Dubai's leadership shows that example to be not true. So the point for my concern and my passion is to make our region succeed and be competitively advantageous. Is wherever you are in a position of leadership, take it. If you are a government, enable. And that's so the multi-stakeholder model becomes secondary because the true leader will know how to create that. That's my 2 cents, under 30 seconds, I hope.
Thank you, Khaled. So, government enable the multi-stakeholder approach to link both of them. So, sorry, we have another question from the floor. We are here a multi-stakeholder, inclusive, a friendly environment meeting, so I will give the floor, priority for Hisham. Sorry.
Sorry, Hisham, for that. Actually, I totally agree with you that regulation will not work to mandate IPv6 deployment with ICPs, with the local communities. So my question will be here. Do you think that regulation will be to mandate IPv6 certification for the imported hardware from outside, like switches or router or firewall, to be IPv6 certified? It is must to be regulated or not? This first thing. Second thing will rather a comment rather than a question. 5G will not only the only service that will make the market hungry for IPv6, but also there is Wi-Fi calling, IoT services that will be available soon. Thank you.
Hisham, I will leave the floor to... Okay, please go ahead, guys.
So on the hardware manufacturer, I think it's not necessary, to be honest. We did not issue a regulation saying that all switches and routers and CPE devices have to be IPv6 compatible. What we've done is basically, in a multi-stakeholder approach, we basically talked to the manufacturers and we said, look, we are going IPv6 and all the operators want to support IPv6. So it's better for you in the market, if you want to sell your devices, they better be compatible with IPv6. That's one thing. And the second thing, some of these devices are procured by the ISPs. So the ISPs actually put it as a mandate when they procure these devices. They put it in the RFP or the orders that they will make or the agreements that it has to be IPv6 compatible. So we took that approach. We did not, but there's nothing wrong if there is a regulation by the government, for example, type approval, saying that there has to be IPv6. Maybe it will help as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. Musab?
Just to add one point here, we are in a similar situation to our colleague Abdurrahman. It could be mandated, but with the collaboration of the ISPs and the operators, we figured out that all of the new devices coming to the kingdom, most of them, they are supporting IPv6. The real issue is that we have non-supporting IPv6 working perfectly in the network, and it cannot be changed in within 1 or 2 years. So this is the real problem. But the new devices, we can say most of them going through that way. And when it comes to the IoT, there is a saying like, if you are going to put more restriction in the IoT, you are against the adoption of the IoT in your country. And at the same time, we're leaving that to the ISPs because they are in dire need of putting IP version 6 working as soon as possible. So we are almost having the same direction when it comes to your question.
Thank you, Saab. Hisham, 1 minute.
I'll try to do even less. Just going back to that theme about leadership, which you brought up, Khaled. A characteristic of leadership is vision. And I will end on that you need to have a vision of where you want to be going. If it's just continuing to provide internet services, then yes, you can use NAT, or you can use any other service, or you can buy IP addresses, and your internet will continue to run. However, if you have a vision, which comes from the leadership, of you want to be at the cutting edge of innovation, then you need to make sure that your internet has what it needs to continue to support what you're building on top of it. Your digital economy, your applications, everything that will give you that cutting advantage, that will bring in the revenue. It's not just going to be the packets back and forth. That's not where the money is. It's what's built on top of it, but you need to do the right thing for the network. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hisham. I really thank everyone. We are over time, but the Secretariat asked me for 3 outcomes. So if you agree with me, I will say leadership, collaboration, capacity building. Vision and leadership. So I believe this is the outcome of this session. Of course, we'll share the report. Thanks for Ulka, thanks for Vahan. And I really thanks everyone in this meeting room, especially our colleagues from the regulator, ITU and Hisham for being here. I wish we have more time to continue this interesting discussion, hopefully next time. Thank you everyone, thank you so much.